attention coaches, healers, practitioners, and seekers. If you want a system of integration and you want to apply it to any experience, I want you to come discover the Condor Approach. It's a revolutionary method that's going to help transform every area of your life. So if you want to make breakthroughs last, and you don't want breakdowns to last so long in the psychedelic space and beyond, come check it out, because we're going to help you from preparation to navigation to integration and really break down what to track, what metrics matter in every body, because it's the most important step when it comes to growth. So come to the Condor Approach, condorapproach.com, and we will see you there, because you already know integration is not optional, but how you integrate is.
Whether you're a life coach, therapist, biohacker, invested in wellness, or in the healthcare profession, if you have an intention to work in psychedelic spaces, you're in the right place then. If you're called, get involved. But first, get informed. Let's talk the 4 N's: intake, intention, in-space integration, leading to deeper transformations. Psychedelic Coach Podcast, Kole. Walk you through the process, it's all possible. Leave space for the follow through. Most importantly, integration is not optional.
All right, so let's get into it. Instinct and intuition is one of the most important, I would say, distinctions I made in my healing journey. For those that don't know, I had tons of chronic medical conditions. I'm not going to get into them all today. There's podcasts and all the things on it. But I had many conditions doctor says were incurable. And as I got onto my own healing journey, I changed my diet and lifestyle. I saw that obviously made a difference. But it made, when I changed my diet, lifestyle, left a toxic marriage, those kinds of things, it resolved like 60% of my symptoms, which was amazing. But for the first time in my life, I thought, yeah, but if I can get this far, what if pain-free is possible? What if symptom-free is possible? And so I started to track everything. That's what the Condor Approach is. It's really a book, it's a method, it's a framework to start to learn the language of your body. Then I started to go, well, how do sometimes I felt like I was listening to my body, and then I felt like lie to me. I thought that I was following my intuition. What I didn't know was that there's instincts and there's intuition. And it's not anything I had ever considered before. And I thought maybe other people haven't considered it either. How do you distinguish the difference between that intuition, which for me, intuition is a more subtle space that's kind of guiding you in, where instincts are more reactive. Think about when a bee flies by you and you kind of move away. That's the instincts of the body perceiving danger, trying to stay alive, trying to stay out of harm or detriment. So I like to look at these as a dance through awareness. We want both. So when I say intuition, it's like that inner guidance. Someone might say sage. Where I grew up, they might say the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit, God, source, whatever. But it's that inner sound, that inner light, that inner vibration that's guiding you towards your authentic desires, your purpose, or some might say your mission. Where instincts is a more immediate response rooted in survival. So it's protecting you from harm. But the thing is, where it gets tricky is your body isn't going to tell you the difference between perceived harm and actual harm. And what I mean by that, I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. What we're looking for is a holistic awareness, a combination of intuition's insight and instincts. Instincts are immediate protection from danger and an avoidance of harm. Intuition is guiding us towards opportunities for growth and fulfillment. And so navigating both is necessary. To say, this says balanced, I would say more integrated, because I don't actually believe in balance being a totality, definitive space of equal. We can be in balancing, but I don't actually, for me, ascribe to there is a balanced approach. There is merely an integrated approach that can work for you at different times in different ways. And so when we get into an integrative approach, we're looking to really be a conductor of this inner orchestra. There's a great book called Your Symphony of Selves by James Fadiman and by Jordan Gruber. And so in the Symphony of Selves, it talks about how we work with the different parts of ourself, just like you would in an orchestra. There's the violins, there's this, the string section over here, the horn section, knowing when to cue which part. And so for me, intuition and instinct is another aspect of that, by knowing first the difference, how to understand them. And it's not that we can always cue them, but we can develop them. So mindful observation, recognizing the sensations and feelings associated with decisions. Example, if in a past relationship, someone raised their voice and also was violent, then body in the future, if it hears someone raise their voice, may become protective from that person out of fear of violence, even though those two things may not exist in the same environment. And so that instinctual intelligence says this person is dangerous, when in actuality, they might not be. We might just need to have a conversation around boundaries and them raising their voice or projecting their anger on me. I'll share an example of that with me and Ta later. So when you start to sit and meditate, bring awareness and journal, you'll start to see where are your intuitive insights and where were your instinctual insights. If you walk into a room and some part of you is like, here's a loud noise, or there's a lot of people, it says we need to leave. For me, instincts are very loud. They're reactive because it's a survival thing. So it needs to get you to move quickly. Where intuition tends to be more subtle. If you don't find kind of some spaces to really drop in with it, you can miss intuition. Where instincts will cut through anything that you're doing, because if this vehicle can't survive, then what good is the intuition anyway? So its number one priority is to fortify and keep this vehicle safe. So trusting your gut, this was a trap for me for a little while, this idea of intuitive eating, for example. I said, I'm going to follow intuitive eating because I'm going to listen to my body. But my body had already been manipulated chemically by sugars and processed foods and things I'd been eating before. So my body was craving certain foods from an instinctual place, not an intuitive one. But I didn't understand the difference. I didn't understand that a lot of my hunger was actually thirst. I didn't understand that some of the cravings were because I wasn't feeling satiated by life, not food. And no matter how much I ate, I would not ever feel fulfilled. And so this is where you start to track those sensations in the body. Curiosity. That's where the Condor Approach can be an amazing tool. You can get it on Amazon. It's $12 and it comes with a whole course included in the book. So in there, you start to track your bodies and sensations. And I break it down simply that look at the literal function of the body part you're sensing. So example, I'm starting to feel activated in a conversation or starting to feel attacked and I can't use my voice. Like I'm not able to say anything. I'm getting emotionally flooded. I'm literally feeling frozen, which is known as a freeze response. I can start to feel choked up here. Is that my intuition? No, that's my instincts. There is a threat. I'm feeling attacked and unable to speak my truth because the overwhelm I'm experiencing in my body. And so as you start to get curious around the sensations, you'll find most of the time, just by acknowledging them, you're able to understand them and they'll wash over you and actually pass through your system. But until we acknowledge them, I see all the emotions, all the things we refuse to see become noise, like a radio signal or like a radio tower, where you've got screamo rock happening over here, and then you've got Disney music over here, and you've got Beethoven over here. All those emotions are beautiful, but playing at the same time make it impossible to delineate, let alone hear intuition. So then we get locked in a reactive state of processing. Then I'm always just trying to avoid. I don't want to get in a fight over here. I don't want to do this over here. So it's almost like having all these apps open on your phone, all at the same time draining your body's resources. So then, of course, you're not going to understand what is intuitive. So where do you start, right? Seeking guidance. But at the end of the day, like, you can have mentors, you can have friends, but it really comes down to you. This has to be your process. Instincts can sometimes lead you away from the life you're trying to create, but you may be misconstruing that as instinct or intuition, excuse me. So here's one of the ways that your instincts can get in the way. Instincts triggered by fear can cause resistance to risks and stepping out of your comfort zone. Think about a time that maybe you saw someone out somewhere, you wanted to go talk to them, and you froze out of fear. Your instincts of not wanting to be rejected or hurt or whatever, not acknowledged, triggers this shutdown, and you actually can't go talk to them. You're not able to step out of that comfort zone. That's why for me, practices like ice baths, cold exposure, breath work that's a little bit more challenging, resistant work, longer holding poses in yoga. It's not all about the flexibility, but actually the stagnation of a pose and the activation that comes as a result of holding a pose. It gets you out of your comfort zone, but intentionally and with more care. Then there's the comfort zone trap. Your instincts crave familiarity. So creating resistance to change and trying new things. How many times have you, for those of you that have done psychedelic experiences before, or ketamine or breath or whatever, how do you actually relate to this concept? So this is where we have to get to a level of first awareness of our sensations. And for me, that starts first by exploring what our body's been through. That's why for me, doing 30 days of the Condor Approach to explore your sensations, to see where you are and what your own continuum looks like. So I think that whether it's my language or any trauma-informed language or anyone's language, take what I say or anyone else says as a consideration and know that only you can delineate what is instinctual and what is intuition. Whether it's human design, astrology, psychedelics, breath work, we can be empowered by what we learn, or we can use them as excuses for what we're learning. So sometimes when we get informed with language, we can just confuse ourselves versus explore ourselves and stay merely curious. So we'll actually have a deeper conversation around that, because there's lots of concepts that I feel can be beneficial, but they can also become semantics in such a way that it keeps us from our own evolution. When at the end of the day, if you track yourself, your body sensations, your daily stressors, really for 90 days, you'll learn more about yourself and what's true for you than any other context could give you. The rest are nice ideas. It's almost like we're operating. I don't know if any of you are into Star Trek, but all of these concepts, including the ones I'm sharing now, one someone else made up, which means that they were doing it from their own lens in observation of. So we are all more like Captain Kirk. Intuition is how Captain Kirk led his life, but he also had Spock. He also had that voice of reason, that coach or mentor that could see the bigger picture, that understood the data so that we could be in conversation. And I think with our bodies, we have to be in conversation in order to see. I can also make up lots of reasons why I should never do anything based off of what the slowest part of me wants to do. So we'll talk about that more. So immediate gratification. This is another reason our instincts can get in the way of where we want to go or what we want to do. Instincts prioritize short-term needs at the expense of long-term goals. Give me a 1 in the chat if you've experienced that in some way, where you noticed that you wanted something right now and it felt so urgent. And then after you did it, you were like, oh, probably could have waited. Probably would have, maybe that wasn't necessarily my intuition. Like, yes. And anyone that's in human design maybe you also have related to this before, where you do something on like the high of an emotion, you're emotionally defined. That's me. Ratchet wave 2-4. Thank you very much. Generator. Another construct that serves me well, and I use as excuses when it serves me too. So I'm here for all of it. I love all of it. So when you start to look at what is my longer term goal, I thought for years this idea of like a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, because what I noticed in my own psychedelic explorations and my work with master teachers in plant, animal, and fungi form was that if I base what I think is possible in the next 5 years, it's not even going to be close, because as I've continued to evolve and change, it's not really applicable anymore, because I have done things outside of what I even knew was possible. So what I do is I set an intention. I say, where would I like to be? Intention being, what do I want to know, do, be, or understand in these next 5 years? And then I can kind of reverse engineer. From there, then I have to look at my short-term choices. I personally don't pull in the idea of this is a good decision for me or a bad decision for me. I say, this is what I want to know, do, be, or understand. Here's the choice in front of me. Is this choice going to align me with that outcome, take me away from that outcome? If it does take me away, how far, and can I accept that? Because to me, it's not about this higher self perfected place. It's about being in my humanity. It's about being in the to be in imperfection is being perfectly human, while knowing that I have the ability to influence the type of human and expression I want. And I do believe that I am also divinely guided, that I have a purpose, that I have a very clear mission for myself. And so knowing that in my reality as well, if I make this choice, what is the consequence? Consequence, right? With sequence. I do this, the sequence is this, versus something bad. So it can be a positive, desirable sequence, or it can be a less desirable sequence. Consequence. And if it takes me away from it, but not too far, and I'm okay with that, and I want to have a drink, if I want to have a cigarette, if I want to have sugar, if I want to be in a shame spiral, all the things that much of in the spiritual community they would deem as low vibration. I don't ascribe to the idea that low vibration is bad. It's just knowing that if I stay in only a high vibration, I'm also muting so much of what brings beauty to my own lived experience. I've just become aware of not projecting my experiences onto other people or my expectations in the same way. Can't say they're totally gone or anything, but I certainly don't place them on people the way that I used to. I'm able to be with all of my sensations, both my instincts and my intuition, without kind of like bleh. Like I just see it as kind of like vomiting energy on people. And so when I'm looking at that long-term goal and the more immediate short-term need or desire that I have, I know that especially as it's come to money, that at times it would be like, if I haven't been making money for a while, I'm justifying spending money on myself because I deserve it. To me, deserving is a trap. I think that if we bring in the idea of deserve, we also bring in an entitlement. And that's just not the way that the world works from my observation. So I like to say that because I desire it, because I choose, not because I deserve it. Because otherwise, if I'm not getting the things in my life that I feel like should be warranted by my hard work, then I'm also getting what I deserve. And because I let go of the idea of everyone deserves this, it doesn't work in my mind because of childhood abuse, because of slavery, because all of these things, none of those people or children deserved, myself included, deserved what they got. And yet, I don't know, I guess to me, the idea of I deserve it also comes into, it can be a bit of a block in following your intuition, because I truly believe for myself that what happened in my own life is what was the catalyst for who I am, from the depths of the traumas to the bliss of the most incredible experiences. That's what created all of the different notes that play the beautiful symphony that is my life, that continues to be my life, that still has its challenges and losses and all of those things. And so when I released myself from the idea, I get what I deserve, or I create, and so I deserve something, it's a deeper level of trust, because I have really tuned into the difference of what my intuition tells me and what I feel guided towards, makes all those other things rationalizations. And that then my reactivity, if I'm not getting what I deserve instinctually because I believe I deserve more than I have, right? So there's my little bit of a rant for a second. That can happen too in here if you don't already know me. Lots of rants. So resistance to vulnerability. This is another thing our instincts can block. Instincts may result in emotional walls and hinder deep connection with others. How many of y'all have had a time that you met someone that you wanted to connect deeper with and you literally couldn't? Like either you would just freeze, or you were afraid they'd be like somebody else, or you're in a relationship and you keep noticing your own stuff coming up and getting in the way. And you're like, I don't know if you guys talk to yourself. I talk to myself a lot. So I sit and I'll literally have a conversation and I'll be like, don't do this. This is a terrible idea. Todd loves you. Those of you that know Tar have witnessed Tar. He's the most loving, kind person ever. Both he and I have tried to blow up this relationship in the last 10 years for different things, because our instinct said, for me, my instinct said, if I fully allow myself to be in the totality of love with this person, I felt like I would not survive if I lost it. So I had these little walls of instincts that were like, but then I might die, because I know how much I hurt in the past from losing love, from losing people, to death, to cancer, to abandonment, to whatever. And so the instinctual part of myself was like, if I lose this love, I will die. And so it put these little walls up for self-protection. And the important thing to know with walls is I don't think it's always functional to bring walls down. Walls are there for a reason. Just like inside my house, walls keep things out. And if we merely look at what do the walls serve and why do the instincts have these in place? What was it that caused this wall to be here? In the psychedelic space, I hear when I was facilitating full time, people would come in, they'd be like, I just want to bust through this wall. And I was like, how about first we get curious with the wall? Why is it there? Because just like renovating a house, if we want to do an internal renovation, and you just start knocking walls out because you see one, it could be a load-bearing wall. It could be a wall that's holding up. It's an adaptation of trauma or an experience and that was traumatic, but it's holding you together. And I've watched people go into higher dose experiences or just going in very intensely, and they see a big wall and they want to tear it down. Then after their experience, they can't work. They can't care for their kids. They're not able to function. So when we look at, let's get curious first with what the wall serves. Why did the instincts develop this wall, and just approach it curiously? If you work in psychedelic spaces, spend a journey exploring the labyrinth of your body. What does this wall serve? Can we just add a door or like a drive-through window? Like maybe you're not ready to let people in, but you'll have a little slide open window. Or if you live more in the hood, you got those little rotatey ones, right? So no one can reach in, but you can still exchange information. I don't know if anyone else ever had those, but when I was in Bed-Stuy, we had them. So this is the opportunity to start to learn what the instincts are trying to keep you alive. So I want to honor them and protect them and understand them, while trusting that some of them aren't needed anymore. I just don't need it anymore. I can get curious. I can learn why it's there. And maybe I'm just going to take it down one brick at a time, and it's going to be a longer process. But sometimes that is the slowness our body needs, instead of let me break through. Like even the idea that we need breakthroughs. What if we didn't need a breakthrough? What if that wall can help you build a beautiful house? We don't have to always do a total tear down. Sometimes, but I think that many people approach this work as a tear down, and it's years to rebuild something. And it's just not always necessarily required. So the other way that our instincts can get in the way is rigid belief systems. Instincts can be tied to established beliefs and create inner conflicts and slow down or even stop personal growth. If I believe that men are cheaters, if I believe that at some point they're all bad, they're all going to do wrong, my instincts can keep my walls up. My instincts could make me more suspicious. My instincts might say, what's he doing on his phone? Right? Those are instincts tied to established beliefs because I have a belief that something is true. And so if I believe that someone that's out sleeping on a bench at the park is a person that doesn't have a home and they live in the bushes and whatever, would it impact how I walk past them on the trail? And we have conscious beliefs and we have unconscious beliefs. Here's an example of an unconscious belief. When I was in Flatbush, Brooklyn. I'm walking down the street and I've intentionally spent, I would say, the last 6 or 7 years understanding how racism works through these unconscious belief systems within my own physiology. So not my mind or not consciously, right? And so first I did work around what I consciously believed or understood. But then there was all of these belief systems that had been programmed into my instincts, and it was creating what we would call multi-construct strain. I believe myself to be a good person that doesn't judge someone based off of race, culture, ethnicity, religion, whatever. But unconsciously, from where I grew up, from the movies I'd watched, from seeing the news, I had unconscious instincts programmed into my body. Here's how it played out. I'm walking down the street in Flatbush, and I'm walking by a man that's probably 6'1", 6'2", regular build, pretty everyday clothes or whatever. I walk past him and I just will say he's got a sprinkle of melanin like me, right? Just a sprinkle. He walks past me and I don't change my path. And then another man comes around the corner, right? And I lived mostly in a Caribbean neighborhood in Flatbush. And so this man's walking down the street. And as I'm walking towards him, I walk like 2 steps to the side and then back on my trajectory. And I paused immediately. And I turn and look around. And I realize I'm like, if that didn't just happen back to back, would I have noticed it? And so the first man that passed me had a skin color pretty close to mine. The man that was after that, he looked like he was Trinidadian. And so I was like, the only difference between these two men, their clothing style was the same. Their stature was about the same. And so I had to really sit with that for a second and go, did I just take 2 steps to the right because the second man was from Trinidad or he looked that way? Huh. So when we look at how instincts get programmed into our body, it's on so many deep levels, y'all. And when you actually give yourself the opportunity to consider and just observe it, then you can really work with it and be with it. And it's not that I'm always trying to dig necessarily, but it is informing me of some pretty powerful realizations I can work with. So embracing the journey of creation. Don't let instinctual patterns hold you back, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater either. Step out of your comfort zone and embrace new experiences. Embrace delayed gratification for long-term fulfillment. Be open to vulnerability and genuine connections. Challenge outdated beliefs and embrace personal growth. One of my favorite things with the Condor Approach Live, which is the live 3-day training that we do, is we have a very robust group of people in age, culture, gender, religion, lived experience. Like, we all have one thing in common, and it's one, a deep desire for radical responsibility of our own lived experience. 2, have done enough work to be able to have the more challenging conversations around gender, around homophobia, transphobia, racism, political systems. I mean, you name it, we actually have those conversations, and it's uncomfortable. And it's a new experience for many people. For some people, they've never been in a room. Our February event was predominantly from the Black community. And we had white folks in the room who had never sat in a container with that many Black folks before. And so just for them to sit in it allowed them to see some of these unconscious beliefs or unconscious instincts that had been programmed in. And for some people, it's tough to see because they want to be a good person. They want to be an ally. They want to be a friend. They want to be a whatever, right? And so as we went through the experience, people were able to have some of the conversations they've never been able to have before. And, Ta's perspective, because he was always in Brooklyn, he wasn't Black enough in a lot of communities, but he certainly was never white. His family's descendants of slaves in this country. So when he did genetic testing, the medicine man since they're 7 was like, dang, Ta, you have like all the oppressed people within your bloodlines. And so I can say that for me, I never have the focus of reconstruction. What I have is continued awareness and putting myself in rooms of learning from people who have very different lived experiences and literally getting into the room, just being quiet and listening. That's how. Because in rooms of people who don't have experiences like me, no matter what it is, I'm able to feel what comes up in me being in that container. I'm able to then, in that moment, write it down and explore it and understand it. And that for me it's not a reconstruction, it's like an understanding, which changes my constructs that already exist. And so merely the more I put myself, I've spoken at prisons, youth detention centers, and going and having conversations in those places and spaces is where I learned the most about myself. So that is what reconstructing it was for me, was actually allowing my own awareness of my instincts creates the reconstruction. So if you've never explored these kinds of concepts, I really invite anyone watching to come to the Condor Approach. Come check it out for 3 days. If you ever decide you want to come, you'll know. For those of you who have been, you already know because you've been there. Many of you here have been there. But I want to open up a bit more dialogue around questions, considerations. Remember, this is my perspective. So please don't take it as some rule or, the way that it should be or anything. I love hearing about observations you've had of your own conditionings, intuition versus instinct. And just to recap, for me, instincts are basically all the habits our bodies develop to survive. So even if we never had come in touch with a snake, like say a rattlesnake, but you grew up in, I don't know, where don't they have them? You grew up in Connecticut. They don't have rattlesnakes in Connecticut, but you saw them on TV. So what we create as our reality comes from our lived experience, what we were told, what we saw on television, what we heard on the news. All of those are what create the lenses that we view the world through. And so if you're out walking in the wilderness and you hear a rattle, even if it's an area that doesn't have a rattlesnake, you might move quickly because your body's been programmed to believe a rattle in the woods might be a rattlesnake. You don't have time to delineate if you're in the right set or setting for the threat, right? Or bears. How many people have gone camping, took bear spray and all the things, but you've never actually seen a bear camping? They might be around, but they don't generally want to be with people. But we've heard enough from the news or something else that we're just going to be protective of it. So instincts are all the habits that we've developed for protection. And I like to say it's more pushing me away from things. Intuition for me is more of a guiding towards things. So I have to have that stillness. I have to have that quiet time to really drop in and listen. And I notice my intuition tends to be more in my heart area. That's where my sensations, it tends to be more relaxed here. I'm taking deeper breaths when I'm listening, and it feels very gentle. And it feels almost like flowing outward. When I'm reactive instinctually, it feels like everything contracts to move quickly. What gives me the most clarity around it is I get up every day and my minimum is a 1-mile walk. That's my minimum. On my worst day, a 1-mile walk, because it's about 15 minutes at a slow pace, 15 minutes back home. That's my space to really check in. Where am I today? What's going on in my body? That little bit of movement gets the system going a little bit. And even if you gave yourself a 10-minute walk every single day, first thing up with the sun, there's something that does for you to help to bring awareness to where you are. Listen to some music, stop and sit for 10 minutes, and just create some space. And then I know I keep saying it because it's really, really good. The Condor Approach is $12 on Amazon, but it actually is a body tracking every day. That awareness, it's just your information. All it is questions for you to ask yourself. It's not something else like trying to inject knowledge into you. It's actually getting you to become more self-reflective. Then you start to notice, wow, when I start to get reactive, I feel it in this part of my chest. If you've watched someone go red, like here, they start getting activated, you watch their whole face just get red, get activated, right? That is all protective, instinctual things happening. It's not intuition. That's the nervous system saying I'm not feeling safe in some kind of way. And so when I started to do that body tracking, I could feel before that got all the way up here, I could feel, what is the first place I feel it? Down in my solar plexus, actually, kind of my power center, right above my belly button. And so because I got that level of awareness, I could pause, pull back, and take a physical scan, what we call the 3 Ps: pause, pull back, take a physical scan, and ask someone, you know what, can we pause for just a second? I just need to breathe. And anyone that won't pause to let you breathe, you do what you want with that information. That's a different conversation. But I can feel that initial activation point, and that's where I can start to re-articulate my instincts towards that person or towards that dynamic. Is I pause, and sometimes I'll literally take a step back, just place my hands here for a second and breathe. Because I'm feeling that very first sign of my instincts coming online to protect me. Defensiveness, whatever. So it's pretty game changing. Understanding what your own intentions are, someone that understands your intentions and some of your lived experience, your life experience that can cause your body to have certain reactions is really important. Because a facilitator that knows that, then you can trust them to be your guide, not to surrender to their power, but to allow yourself to be guided in their process. And for me, that's where we're seeing more harm, is more people are going to shaman or facilitators. They're giving their power away and saying, here, save it, help me, versus asking more questions, really learning what and sometimes you learn your instinct and intuition from selecting, I'll say, wrong for what you wanted. You'll be like, man, I really thought it was drink more last night, but the lesson was not to. I just saw that everyone else was, so I thought maybe I'm not doing it right. Right? But then it was informed by my instincts, not my intuition. It was informed by what I think, not what I feel. And when you're first learning the distinction of those, it is a little bit tricky. And that's why paying attention to what's different this time, or what's the same for this time when other times I didn't listen to myself, or times I did listen to myself. Where did you feel it? And sometimes that can be as easy as just taking a sheet of paper. What were the circumstances where you trusted yourself, that gut, that you trusted that instinct or that intuition, and it turned out well? And what are the times that you didn't listen, or you were reactive and it was incorrect for what you wanted? It didn't get you what you thought. You realized, like, oh no, that wasn't intuition. That was definitely something else. To bring awareness to the times that it felt, just based off of what you heard today, of what was instinctual and what was intuition, that's the greatest way, I feel, to start to develop that language for yourself. I created a free audio course. If you go to readyformore.me, it's a 7-day, 20 minutes a day audio course, talks a bit more about body mapping. It's going to give you more processes to consider with instinct and intuition. The first 2 days, it's kind of building the context. And then the last 3 days is when it's really going deeper into body mapping, the logic sealing. If you want to come to the Condor Approach Live, I will see you soon. Peace.